Boy, this place sure looks familiar. Almost like I was here in Lothric like a week ago. Well, we're back, and today we're taking a stab at an old favorite weapon for the channel, the claws. In fact, seeing how well the claws performed in the first Dark Souls was the topic of my very first video. And I've learned a lot since then. Most importantly, that From Software seems to have understood that while the claws were a terrible gimmick weapon in their early incarnations, they've become a relatively impressive build choice in later games, like Elden Ring. However, that does still beg the question about the progression of the weapon between Dark Souls and Elden Ring. So, with that in mind, howdy, I'm Prakuza, and welcome to DevBox, where today we're asking the question, can you beat Dark Souls 3 with only claws? To start our journey, we need to first get our weapon, and in order to do that, we'll have to make our way through two separate bosses, Edict's Gundyr and the Dancer of the Boreal Valley. The first is pretty obvious, as it is the tutorial boss, and there's no way to beat him with a majority of weapons that appear elsewhere in the game. Still, there are plenty of ways to get past him that are at least thematically adjacent to our intended method. It's the second of these two that really causes the issues, but we'll get there when it becomes relevant. For now, we start off as the Mercenary, which offers us a start with the Strength and Dex stats to immediately start using the claws as soon as we get it. And we also get the Sellsword Twin Blades, which are an incredibly powerful weapon that has become something of a darling for speedrunners thanks to their crazy DPS. These would then make quick work of Edict's Gundyr, especially when dual-wielding and basically being allowed to mash L1 for an easy win. So, we're going to be taking those off immediately, and we'll instead punch Gundyr right in the face with our bare fist. Might as well get rid of our shield too, for good measure. For now, after having done something similar to this in DS1 a while ago, the result of this fight showcases exactly why DS3 is my favorite game in the trilogy. Don't get me wrong, it's not perfect, and DS1 does a ton that DS3 wishes it could have captured a second time. But like, if I'm making this fight look easy without a weapon or shield, it's not because I'm some kind of Chad who can no-hit every boss and play this game with my eyes closed. It's because it's way easier than you ever would have imagined until you try. Oh, and if you're wondering why I always seem to spam roll after each time I get hit by that claw swipe, it's because I'm rolling barely too late, and the game is saving my input to do after my flinch. And then I have to keep rolling to not get instantly frame trapped. Yeah, and we don't get this on the first try, even if it does come this close. But it takes nowhere near as long as I had originally expected it to. And we're quickly through Firelink and heading into the high wall of Lothric. We're running through here very quickly to get to the final barrier blocking our way to our weapon. And even getting to that barrier takes a hot minute.
Must be my dear Prince Lothric.
Then once the fight starts, we've got a new issue to contend with. How do we kill an endgame boss with a starting character and no weapons? Well, my first idea was to get an NPC to do the work for me. To get this done, I had to kill the Swordmaster back at Firelink. You may have noticed that I've been wearing his clothes this whole time. However, there are a few problems with this plan. One is that getting him into the fight means fighting a ton of enemies, which will whittle down his health by quite a bit. Second, once he actually gets into the fight, he's only scaled to fight Vort, not Dancer. So yeah, that idea is completely dead in the water. Then I try fighting her with my bare fists, which also doesn't go super well. She's strong enough that some attacks will instantly kill me, and I'm not that guy. This here would be some Lobos Jr. territory, which I could only wish. Instead, let's grab a bow and have some tasty cheese. We'll call it a Gorgonzola, since it kinda stinks that I'm settling to do this, but I like it anyway. But yeah, the setup here is stand outside of Dancer's room, walk slowly forward until the input to enter the fog appears, then enter and spam backstep, which is the dodge without a directional input. You'll appear right in front of the doors, but not far enough into the arena to trigger the boss. Then, fire arrows into her head until she dies. It took about 145 arrows to get through this, 99 wooden arrows from the Shrine Maiden, and 46 standard from Great Rat. But yeah, we're through and get to go grab our weapon. Also, another quick note for the setup. To get in position, start in the boss arena and quit out. This will let you inch towards the door and stay far back without the Lothric Knights aggroing. You can kill them as well, but it was cheap enough to use a bow to kill Dancer, so I might as well not make it worse by killing the Knights too. Anyway, now that we're through Dancer, we can head into the Consumed King's Garden and pick up our weapon for the evening. Or morning if you watch this when the video goes live. Or probably evening if you watch this when it goes live on Patreon, actually. That could be whenever. To the point, we've got the claws. As we equip our weapon, there's one important note to these that update it from the original DS1 version. These can be held in both hands, and when wielded as such, we actually get 2 claws. We've seen this before on the channel in Elden Ring and Bloodborne, although I don't want to attempt to confirm which game this originates from, since I haven't researched the DS2 ones enough to make that claim with full confidence. Seeing as how the power stancing moveset from the dual-wielding weapons in DS3 is a carryover from DS2, I wouldn't be surprised to see that this twin weapon two-handing also started back there. I mean, I could also go play the game and check, but like, I won't. Now, admiring the weapon is all well and good, but let's go ahead and get some use out of it. How about against Vort? This ought to be easy. I really hope that isn't prophetic of the rest of the run to come. Nah, that actually had more to do with starting the fight with half health and no flasks, since I'd used all of that fighting the 2 Lothric Knights outside of the Dancer arena. Why? Because I wanted to test out the claws. Why did I fight Vort without heals instead of resetting at the bonfire? Because I wanted to flex. Besides, I had already put the souls from Dancer into Vigor and Dex, so I was over-leveled for this guy anyway. In fact, on the second attempt, I only get hit twice, and take less damage than I had remaining that first time, while I dig a hole through Vort's belly. So I guess that goes to show. Careful to stretch before you flex, or you might blow out your sphincter. On this trip through the Undead Settlement, we're going to be making a bit more of a straight shot through the area than last time. However, on the way, I played around with the claws a bit, getting to some of that stretching that's so important, testing the limits of my new moveset. And wouldn't you believe it, From Software out here pulling this double roll bullshit again. For those who don't remember back in DS1, the attack that would follow up a dodge roll involved the character rolling and then stabbing forward with the claw. It is the only thrusting attack on this entire weapon's moveset, but I will repeat myself for clarity of how terrible this attack is, since apparently FromSoft loves repetition in the claws patterns. If you attack after performing a dodge roll, you will perform a second roll before thrusting your weapon forward. Like, why? Why do this? Why double up on the roll before performing an otherwise objectively amazing attack? That full extension thrust is the best part of the longsword moveset with its thrusting R2, but for some reason, the Claw, a high-speed dex weapon, decided that it doesn't want to be used right after a dodge. You know, the go-to method for avoiding damage for lightweight, high-speed builds. Instead, it wants to make the dodging follow-up so heinous that you will do everything in your power to keep your finger a whole state away from R1 if you have rolled at any point in the last half-century. It is truly baffling. But at least the L1 while rolling is actually pretty good this time around, so we'll probably keep using that forever. Anyway, while we're here in the Undead Settlement, we can also get a good view on how this weapon handles crowd control, which is to say, not well. As well, it handles NPC fights, which is also to say, well, actually, fighting more here isn't completely indicative of how every NPC fight will go, but that doesn't change the fact that this fight absolutely rips me apart. I even try to get the other enemies from the area in on the fight, but they do not help as much as I would have hoped. Instead, what gets me the win is dropping Morn off a cliff, then following him down to finish him off. And for our trouble, we're doubly rewarded, because we get to drop down into the crevasse and find the loincloth hidden in these tunnels, which combines with the reason we fought Morn in the first place and finishes our drip. Yeah, so in previous claw-only runs, I've found an animal head helmet to wear, including the boar helmet, fake Blythe mask, and eventually the Beast's Embrace rune in Bloodborne. For DS3, however, there aren't a lot of animal helmets, so we go for Morn, since we won't be doing his questline anyway, and we can get a kind of gargoyle-like helmet, which is good enough. To finish off Undead Settlement, we also kill the demon with Onionite and make peace with the giant archer. Okay, boss time. So, the Curse-Rotted Greatwood is an odd fight for the claws, but not extremely difficult. Some of the weak points take some doing to hit, because of a combination of their elevation and the short range of claws. Although, I'm doing this run right on the tail end of putting the Astora run together, and I gotta say, the range is not that much worse. Like, sure, I don't have the longsword thrust, but like the R1 spam, which is now replaced by L1 spam, doesn't really give that much of a range advantage. Besides, for most enemies, the problem is speed, not range. With so many attacks that whip out immediately, getting the upper hand usually comes from baiting and getting a Hamedo out before the enemy's hit connects. And if you don't remember what a Hamedo is, then it's because you never watched the Final Fantasy Tactics Retro Respect. Because I ran over my deadline for it and shelved the project until next year. But hey, now you've got something to look forward to next June. Be sure to make it there. But anyway, the Greatwood goes down in one attempt, and we can make our way to the Crucifixion Woods. Plowing through the Outrider Night on our way there, definitely getting through super easily. What can I say? This game's tough. Alright, we're already blasting through the Crucifixion Woods and actually taking a bit of a roundabout pathing for our progression today. Because we'll be leaving real quick in order to head into Farron Keep. We aren't here to face off against the Abyss Watchers yet, but we'll be roaming around killing the Stray Demon, lighting the fires, and picking up both the Farron Coal and a Poison Gem. We'll get to exactly why we grabbed these soon, but they won't be relevant until after the next boss. Speaking of which, now that we've gotten everything we wanted out of Farron Keep, we can head back to the woods and fight the Crystal Sage. Now, when I say that this is a first try kill, I want to express that this is strange for me, since the Crystal Sage tends to trip me up on most runs. That being said, once you see this flurry of blows, it becomes pretty obvious exactly why this goes as well as it does. Turns out, as long as I can keep my combo going uninterrupted, the claws are capable of hitting some intense levels of DPS. We're also at about +3 at this point, which is certainly helping out the damage. But yeah, this is also part of the standard use of the weapon. Looks like this challenge might not be quite as challenging as it used to be in older games. Guess we still haven't found the inflection point where the claws went from rough to goated. We're clearly deep into goated territory here. Although, not all that glitters is gold, and we still have plenty of struggles to come, even if it isn't exactly in this fight. Time for us to head into the Cathedral of the Deep, where we continue to realize that the weapon is very bad at crowd control, and struggle against the maggot-infested hollows since we haven't infused our weapon with fire in this run. Considering we've also been dumping souls into a combination of vigor and dex, that's not exactly going to be the best choice for our claws either. Fortunately though, for all the issues that the claws run into here, once they stagger an enemy, that stun lock basically keeps up until it's dead. However, before we can head all the way into the cathedral proper, we need to make a trip into the painted world of Ariandel. We're here to pick up another set of claws that was introduced with the first DLC. Located on a roof deep into the Corvian village, we find the Crow Talons, which has mostly the same moveset as the regular claws, but now with the weapon skill Raptor Fury, which executes an extremely quick series of attacks in sequence. In that case, we use the Farron Coal and Poison Gem we found earlier to apply poison to the Crow Talons, and make it a status inflictor. Unfortunately, poison isn't great in DS3, so we won't be relying on it too much. Okay, now we'll be heading back to the cathedral, and hyper-aggression gets us through most of the fights, especially as long as we challenge every enemy one-on-one. From the Cathedral Knights to the Deep Accursed to the Grave Wardens. Really loving the DPS here as long as there aren't too many enemies. All the way to the boss, which is a massive group fight against like 30 dudes. Shit. So yeah, the lack of crowd control really shines here. Now, with the DPS we have and the wide attacking combos, the problem here isn't hitting a bunch of enemies all at once and killing them. The problem is that there is very little in the way of knockback like larger, heavier weapons have, which means that I have no way of flattening out enemies and clearing the way to our main target. Instead, I get to use the hit and run tactic. But I also often have to simply dig my way through the crowd. It's kind of visceral, carving through half a dozen deacons like they're a wall of meat standing between me and the main deacon in the center. In this case, Wolverine is really earning his name with such grotesque violence on full display. That being said, as much as it feels like I have to burrow my way through the flesh mound, there are moments where I can sneak in, slap the boss for a while, then dip out. In fact, it's likely that I wouldn't have survived this attempt if I hadn't found a few lines through the crowd without having to slice down a bunch of dudes before finally dealing damage to the boss. With the deacons down, we can head right back to Ferrum Ruins and immediately take on the Abyss Watchers. This fight goes decently well. I mean, they killed me once, but I was expecting this to be a bit of a wall, right up until it becomes clear that the Abyss Watchers have very low poise and can get caught in the Claw's death spiral. In fact, right at the start of the second attempt, I ripped the main Abyss Watcher comfortably down below half health before we even get a hint that his backup is coming. It's the second phase, however, that eventually kills me, mostly because it can't be punished quite as greedily, and I'm fluctuating between aggression and taking a safe distance in order to get out of the way. On the next attempt, we go all in on the aggression and burn the final Abyss Watcher down before he gets too much of a chance to fight back, keeping him stun-locked for most of the fight. Now we can head into the Catacombs of Carthus. While there are a few moments where multiple enemies team up on me, the narrow hallways of Carthus allow for a lot more one-on-one fights, which is where the Claws continue to excel, stun-locking every skeleton I see and holding them in place to be quickly picked apart. Not even their revival will save them. We also put some of the traps to work in our favor, a fun aspect of this location actually that I always love engaging with. I do the same in Sen's Fortress a lot in DS1, but the fact that traps reset constantly here makes Carthus such a fun escalation of that locale. But as we move forward, we break up some balls, drop the bridge, and prep ourselves for the Smoldering Lake. But while we explore the area a bit, we aren't ready to kill the old Demon King yet. We have plans for him coming up. Instead, we head back up to Wolnir and find that high-speed DPS weapons simply don't do it for this fight. It's not impossible, and I break a couple of the bracelets, but getting the last one proves too much of a task on a first attempt. Crazy enough, the RNG actually gets worse as I continue on, since the second attempt sees Wolnir summoning extra skeletons for backup, and his sword. Still, we keep the pressure on, ignore the bony boys, and send Wolnir plummeting into the abyss where he belongs. Onward to Irithyll! As we arrive here, I kill the Sullivan Beast on the bridge to the location proper. Yeah, if it wasn't obvious yet, this is turning out to be a much more solid weapon than I would have expected after how unwieldy the claws were back in DS1. And I absolutely love the power stancing L1. It's so much fun, and gives me a huge reward for the risk of mashing attack. Almost turns this from the slow, deliberate action combat of Souls and drifts into a true hack and slash, right on the cusp of Devil May Cry. After years of maining the greatsword in this game, fighting with any amount of speed is a major update. Kind of the main reason I even do these weapon showcase challenge runs anyway. It's always nice to get a new outlook on these otherwise familiar games. While we're here in Irithyll, we've also been making our way through town until we've been invaded by the Londor Pale Shade, so we can kill them for the Mannequin Claws. The third and final claw type we'll be finding. I'll figure out another build for it to try making it useful in the future, but the regular claws are still the superior version of the weapon. We also admire some art. And finally, we prepare to actually have Onion Knight save Greyrat. This is why we saved the old Demon King until now, so that once Greyrat is out in Irithyll searching for items, and Onion Knight is waiting here, we can go defeat that boss in order to save our thieving friend. So, how's the old Demon King with claws? Well, it goes pretty well. My DPS is on point, but some greed costs me all of my Estus. And the damage gets me through to the end, where the old Demon King gives one final explosion and the fight is basically won. All I have to do is stop seeing red, pull back, and let the boss lose the fight for itself. You ever watch your own brain turn off for a moment? Because that's what editing this is like. What the actual fuck? Okay, run it again, slightly more careful greed, and actually walk the hell away. There we go, easy win. And now we can head back and see that Grey Rat is safe. Awesome. Not sure why I actually did this though, because I never buy anything else from him. Well, while we're beating around the bush before jumping into Pontiff Sullivan, we'll also be dropping down into the Profaned Capital. We're mostly here to pick up the Profaned Coal so that we can give the Mannequin Claws a bleed infusion, hoping to supercharge the weapon's bleed procs. Granted, this isn't exactly Elden Ring, so the extra bleed doesn't stack, instead replacing the slightly weaker bleed buildup with a slightly stronger one. It was not worth the trouble, and the Mannequin Claws will be getting shelved. Like, I keep them equipped, but I'll be sticking to the regular claws from here on out. Which I will also imbue with Sharp, so I can get an even bigger bang for my deck stacking buck. Speaking of which, now that we've got all of that done, we can finally head back up and take on Sullivan. As expected with the Pontiff, I don't get this in one, although I do get it in two. Granted, this is one of the first times that I notice a change in my normal way that I rip through bosses. Sullivan is resistant enough to staggers to not get stun locked like many other enemies. Instead, it's his combos and a surprising lack of aggression that sees him standing still for long enough to let me get a good combo of my own going. And yeah, that might sound odd for Sullivan considering that he's really difficult, but in my experience, what makes him tough isn't his overall aggression, but the fact that once he starts up a combo, it keeps going for a while, and can quickly stunlock the player if you aren't able to avoid the full combo, either by dodging or blocking. So as long as I don't get caught too early, I can usually survive long enough to get a good combo off in response, and quickly grind him down to nothing. Moving on. We're literally running past everything here and heading straight into 2 more boss fights in a row. First up is Aldrich, who is so incredibly easy that it isn't even worth mentioning his moveset, since he doesn't even manage to hit me once. In all seriousness, this does actually go slightly better than my previous run through this area. For the most part, that comes from sticking way closer to the end of his tail to wail on him, allowing me to get my combos off without much risk of his escape into the ground hurting me. So, barring one moment when he sicks the arrows on us in the second phase, we can spend most of the time DPSing his backside and quickly be done with him. Next up is Yorm the Giant, who, well, we've already seen that I've been moving Onion Knight on his normal path, which means, yeah, not really the most thrilling fight with the NPC doing most of the work. Maybe someday I'll solo this guy without the Storm Ruler, but like, yeah, for now, we're through. Oh no! They're taking me back to fight Dancer! I don't know if I have enough Estus to... Right. Already dead. Okay, guess we're heading to Lothric Castle now. It goes fine. We kill the dragons, but we don't stick around in the area for long. We're mostly running through most areas at this point. It's kind of a sprint to the end and we're almost there. So let's hurry up to the Dragon Slayer armor. This is a very kind encounter on the part of the boss. He does so many of his most punishable attacks, and I don't even have to bait them out. For some reason, the dude has no problem winding up his biggest swings and leaving himself open for combo after combo. No self-preservation taking over and deciding to slap me with that shield more or swing his heavy stagger-paced combos that I usually have trouble dodging. The butterflies, or maybe failed versions of the angels from the Drag Keep in the DLC, I'm not sure, are also surprisingly passive throughout this fight. So yeah, this one goes well, but I really can't take all the credit. RNG was very much on my side here, and then it waved goodbye. So yeah, immediately after getting through Dragon Slayer armor, we make it up through the Grand Archives, kill the Crystal Sage, and run past pretty much everything else as we sprint towards the end. Like, to the point that some of the Lothric Knights tried to follow me into the boss arena. At this point, I've had a few difficulties with the claws, mostly coming from a lack of a shield, as well as an inability to really handle multiple enemies. And while that doesn't feel like it should really apply too much to the Twin Princes boss fight, well, it does in a way. See, I've mostly been able to get away with either stun-locking enemies or taking advantage of their brief moments of respite in order to land a few combos and melt their HP with some L1 spam. Lorien, however, does not fit into this niche at all, and things get even worse when Lothric jumps on his back. Yeah, for some reason, this fight takes me as long to beat as some of the later DLC bosses coming up. It's hard to describe exactly what makes this so difficult, but yeah, the twin princes with the claws is somehow on par with Midir and Gale. Even Frida is going to fail to give me as much trouble as these two do right now. The reason for this comes from Lorien's mobility, an odd description for someone whose spine has broken and has lost the use of his legs, but yeah, Big Bro doesn't let the injury slow him down as he teleports around the arena and slaps the ever-loving hell out of me. As a result, I really don't have the time to get the combos off that have been carrying this run. Instead, I need to go for one-off hit and runs. Additionally, while the claws can hit Lothric up on Lorien's back in the second phase, lining up the hits often takes too long and isn't entirely reliable to lean on. Instead, I'm swinging wildly at the bigger brother and hoping for the best when I do manage to luck out and get behind the two. And that's not even to mention the fact that Lothric keeps sending out all of these passive magic attacks that force me to dodge two incoming problems at once for half of the second phase. Eventually, I get the win when I finally knock Lorien down in the second phase and can finally greed as much damage as I want, to the point that even though Lothric is still at about half HP when Lorien goes down, I kill him before he can revive his brother. Finally over. Well, now that brings us to Osiros, and we're back to first trying the bosses. In this case, the RNG isn't exactly the top dog here, but instead, it's my stacked up vigor, which keeps me from getting one shot whenever the Dragon Man rushes across the arena, which he does plenty. Still, surviving those attacks means that he really doesn't have a lot of bite for most of the fight, and we make it through quickly. Next up is Champion Gundyr in the Untended Graves. Things get hairy against this guy for sure, but it isn't entirely unmanageable. It's another unflinching boss who won't let me stunlock him forever, but he's also fairly slow and deliberate with his attacks. Don't get me wrong, if one of his attacks hits, he'll probably mess me up, and I can easily get caught in a combo that will quickly slaughter me. In fact, right at the end, Gundyr nearly gets me while he's down to 1 HP in a dream. Definitely thought I would die to this grab, but fortunately, I get up, brush myself off, and immediately get a clean opportunity to go for the kill. Definitely the kind of ending to a fight that makes my girlfriend flinch as she hopes I'll heal. But veteran Souls fans know that sometimes healing is riskier than simply going for that final hit. But once we're done here, we can take the Path of Dragon emote and take that to Archdragon Peak, where we continue our sprint from boss to boss. Guess that means we're at Ancient Wyvern, which ends with... Okay, maybe it didn't end so abruptly, since I got lost in his topsy-turvy arena. A quick reset and we're at the plunge attack, which actually succeeds in one attempt for once. Like I tell my girlfriend whenever she casually suggests we go ring shopping, no misses for me, thank you. In the proper dungeon, we fight some NPCs who quickly get eaten up by the stun locking of the claws, and while we're here, we go grab the Twinkling Dragon Stones, including getting the one from fighting Hawkwood. Takes 2 attempts, but we eventually get it. Stupid healing bastard. And then all that remained in the base game was the Nameless King. This is a bit strange, but not exactly a surprise, at first at least. The claws don't really have a lot of range to speak of, and the depth perception distorting arena against the Storm King section of the fight really makes it difficult to land a hit. So somehow, the bird killed me. A few times, in fact. In that case, by the time I reach the second phase, I'm dreading the idea of having to get back here again. So I don't. Yeah, somehow, the Nameless King phase is the easier of the two with the claws. Honestly, this comes from taking advantage of his delays. The claws are fast enough to slip in an L1 between each of his hits. So I can very confidently slash, then dodge, then slash again, then dodge again, rinse and repeat. We trade a few blows, and the Nameless King can't get stun-locked, but slipping those free hits in between his combos gives me enough consistent DPS to get the win on my first attempt in the second phase. A welcome, if not surprisingly uncommon, sight. Now that we've cleared out the base game, it's time to head to the DLC. starting with a return to the painted world of Ariandel. Considering that we've already rushed through to most of the bonfires in order to get the pair of claws I never used, we can head straight to both bosses. So, time to fight Champion Gravetender. Yeah, this fight isn't really much of one. The wolves and the main guy go down easily, and I'm able to quickly get behind his shield and slash him down. The real problem comes from not Sif, but even then the pupper doesn't really give me too much trouble. The elevated hurt box does make it difficult for the claws to connect with most attacks, and the tornado dash makes me chase the boss down most of the time. But all this really does is pad out the fight, not actually wear me down to a point where I'm worried about dying. And as such, I don't. But the Gravetender does. This then leads us to Sister Frida. Considering her size, it's not much of a surprise that we can stunlock Frida. She is more like an upgraded NPC than a massive beastly human like Gundyr or Nameless King. So yeah, staggers do their job, and Frida pretty quickly gets burned down. Although, while that would imply that the best option is to press her into a corner and keep the aggression going, being anywhere near the walls in this fight will stop the claws dead as they dink constantly off the walls, even when I'm like a foot away from actually smacking them. The second phase, however, is actually the most difficult in the whole fight, with my deaths in the third phase generally coming from me using all of my Estus at this point and not being able to no-hit Black Flame Frida. While I do like the improvements done here with Frida and Ariandel in the second phase, with both focusing on range combat until the player approaches 1, they keep sticking together during these attempts. It leaves me with very little time to actually get some hits off on Father Ariandel, who generally has the lower defense and is therefore the better target. Although Ariandel gives me 2 unique problems of his own, the first being that the range of the claws cause more issues with finding his hurt box, kind of like not Sif before, and second is the fact that his collision stops me from dodging through his legs, which gets me stuck a lot and leads to me eating hits from both bosses and quickly dying. Still, we eventually make it through with enough Estus to survive Black Flame Frida, which is where I start making use of an ability that has been coming in clutch against the smaller humanoid enemies like her up until this point. But I decided to save mentioning it until now because Black Flame Frida is where it comes in clutch to actually win the fight for me entirely. The L2 on the claw, Leaping Slash, is capable of closing the distance quickly, and usually starts the stun lock and lets me follow up with a powerful combo. It's pretty good against most enemies and NPCs, but not always against most bosses. That being said, Leaping Slash is an absolute powerhouse against Black Flame Frida, and probably the only reason I got the win this fast. And we're quickly off to the next DLC, Dreadkeep time. Woo! We get a sick plunging attack kill on one of the Headless Briar armor dudes, kill some angels, and once we're down in the swampy area, we finally update our drip. Much better, although now we have to fight off against Desert Pyromancer Zoe to see who rocks the fit the best. In the end though, Wolverine is deemed the baddest of them all, and we show her how it's done. Also, side note, I've always known that we find Zoe in some Desert Pyromancy stuff here, but I had no idea that the bonfire for this location straight up calls it the Earthen Peak, like the place from DS2. A neat nod for those who like that game, and something to ignore for those of us like me, who only think about it in the fleeting moments when folks comment about it being not that bad. That's a joke, by the way. If you love DS2, I encourage you to keep singing its praises. I don't though, and never will. Hold that soundbite until I decide to play the game for the channel and, for whatever reason, totally 180 on it, like I did for Consort Radon Phase 1. Okay, but now that we're here in the Dreadkeep, it's about time to head into the first boss of the DLC. I hate this place. So, interesting thing about the Demon Prince and the separated twin first phase. Turns out, not only are they very difficult, but the second phase is based on the order of kills for the first phase. And even though I'm only like a week out from doing this on my last run and had been editing footage for me doing the fight correctly, literally days before fighting them here, I completely forget which one to kill in order to get the easier second phase. Which is why the first time I made it that far, I killed Demon from Below first. The result did not go well. as the empowered demon prince threw fireballs I wasn't prepared for, summoned miniature orbs that shot passive flames at me from behind, and then tried to kill me with the fucking sun. I quickly died. Was more careful on killing the demon in pain first next time, and kind of slaughtered both phases once I got the hang of the fight again. These claws really do rip apart these enemies. Now that we're in the Ring City proper, and I was tired and ready to finish this run and get the video ready, I naturally dicked around for a while and went to fight the Dragon Slayer armor for whatever reason. I don't know, man. As much as I was ready to be done, I was also kind of having fun. The content creator part of me, hungry to upload a video, wanted me to be done, while the part of me that loves playing Dark Souls 3 didn't want to put the claws down. So yeah, I found another obstacle to run into before moving on to knock Midir off the bridge and get to the DLC boss, Final Gauntlet. Let's start with Half-Light. This honestly feels like bullying. Granted, given how much trouble he gave me the last time I fought him, I don't mind. Grind that nerd into the fucking dirt and move on. Midir now highlights the difficulty of trying to nail a combo, but needing to quickly dodge at the same time, and how the claws love to input buffer like 20 hits in a row. It's something that you may have noticed in some of the footage up until now, especially against the faster enemies that back away before I can get a good combo off. I'm very clearly mashing L1 with all my might, and every individual press translates to 2 strikes at a time, which means that if I miss, or the boss backs away to reel up a counter against me, then I'll be fully trapped into a series of saved inputs before I can ever dodge. So many attempts go down to greed more than any other factor. Still, the trick here is, there's no trick. Aim for the head, get close enough to actually connect your shots, and prepare for a very long fight. It's Midir, and the reality of this fight is more about memorizing his patterns and how to avoid them than anything else. Then finally we're on to Gale. Still the reigning champion for the best fight in the game, and in fact all of Dark Souls. We're in another war of attrition like Midir, especially considering that once again Gale doesn't flinch, and also he is far too mobile to get any combos off against him. It's 1 or 2 L1s at a time, and then we're immediately dodging the next attack. Then, once we hit the second phase, pop an Ember if you don't already have one active, and continue to prepare for a long fight. But hot damn, is this not the most fun that I have had for the entire run. Trading Savage Blow for Savage Blow between an animalistic choice of weapon against Gale's mind-rotted fury, as we've now both come so close to our ultimate goal. I will never stop glazing this man. Don't take that line out of context. So, now we're finally at the Soul of Cinder, which should be little more than a formality for reaching the end credits. So final thoughts on the claws in DS3. Well, they've certainly come a long way. I'm sorry. What? What was that wombo combo bullshit? Alright, that one was definitely greed. That's on me. That's on me. Okay, let's lock in a little harder. Get aggressive and drain his health, but this time being a little more careful not to stay at low health while I wail on him. This time I get a solid win that could have been a first try again if I hadn't fumbled my dodges in those last 2 attempts before this. I'd have thought I'd do a lot better than eating 2 deaths after how many times I fought Soul of Cinder to prove all of the weapon buffing differences in my last video. I killed him like 4 times in a row with the various versions of the Astora and Henri's. So honestly, I might have gone in a little cocky with the claws, thinking that I had this in the bag. Pride cometh, right? Anyway, we're finally done, and now we actually can give our final thoughts on the weapon. Enjoy me killing Gundyr and Dancer with claws in New Game Plus while I yap. So yeah, the claws in DS3 have come a long way since DS1. Going from a throwaway gimmick weapon to a legit powerhouse of DPS that sacrifices defense for the sake of fast movement. It's finally starting to remind me of when I really started to fall in love with claw-type weapons in games. Way back in the PS2 era when I found the Kobyoso in Way of the Samurai 2. So I remember being really disappointed when I tried using them in DS1, and they were so suboptimal. Which was even more of a surprise after playing Evergrace, and seeing FromSoft design a whole fleet of pretty competent claws for Charlene. They'd eventually get further updated in Bloodborne with a much larger moveset and trick weapon options, then Elden Ring would take the DS3 style and make them even better. But even in this iteration, hot damn, the claws are a fun build. The further into the series we get, the less and less claw only even feels like a challenge run, as these weapons have become incredibly powerful, and are only difficult in so much that I can't turtle up behind a shield. But like, I don't like turtling up anyway. So yeah, straight up a good weapon that could definitely be made better than I made them here, especially if you put on something resembling armor. And all I could ever wish from this weapon is to get it earlier. Then again, that does still leave 2 more variants of the claws to try out, and something tells me things are gonna get a lot harder from here on out. Hey, it's that time again. The end of the video, where I invite folks to come check out the Patreon, link in the description, and make good on the rewards for those currently pledged. Patreon members get early access to new content, and I've even started holding votes for what upcoming videos are going to be. They also get their names written in the credits at the end of videos. And those who pledge in the top tiers get their names read out, like our DevBox designers, Genghis Braun, and our DevBox developers, Azul. Thanks for your support, and thanks for watching.